Hi there, I'm Chris, and I'm here to talk to you about Moose and how this framework might save you a ton of time as a developer. In the back half of this quick video, we'll jump into actual code, so feel free to skip ahead to the demo if you'd like, but I'll introduce Moose here first. So Moose is an open source developer framework built specifically for software developers who are working on data engineering or analytical workloads. In other words, anything from surfacing up charts and dashboards to your end users in your app, to creating data pipelines to power internal analytics, to exposing data to natural language AI to extract insights for you. The challenge, of course, is that these types of workloads tend to require a specialized stack of technology built for processing and aggregating data. Most software development teams start by building on top of their production transactional database, say Postgres, which gives you the developer experience that you know and love. It's relatively easy to get data into the database, to transform it as needed, and to develop and test APIs on top of the data from your local IDE. The problem is that classical transactional software backends aren't built for these analytical workloads, and at a certain scale, you're going to start to see performance or latency issues. At that point, the only alternative is to dive into the world of purpose-built analytical infrastructure. Unfortunately, in our experience, the developer experience with these data engineer tools falls drastically short of the expectations of modern software developers. There are limited frameworks available to abstract away boilerplate code. It's difficult, if not impossible, to run a local dev server environment, and it's frustratingly complicated to integrate these workloads into your normal software development lifecycle with Git-based version control, unit testing, and CI/CD. So these are the challenges that waste your time as a developer and that Moose tries to address. With Moose, you get intuitive abstractions in TypeScript or Python for modeling and transforming data. You get all of the boilerplate code that configures and connects your infrastructure together included for you under the hood, and you get an elegant, local-first development experience that integrates seamlessly into your software development lifecycle. What this means is that as a software developer, you can get spun up on data engineering workloads in minutes, not hours, and as a software development team, you can deliver on priority data and analytics projects in a sprint instead of a month or more. So let's take a quick look at some actual code. The Moose framework is available in TypeScript or Python. We'll look at TypeScript today, but the concepts and implementation are essentially the same in Python. In every Moose application, I've got my app folder where I do all of my development, and I've got a folder for each type of Moose primitive. With the data model primitive, I can model the structure of my data using native TypeScript interfaces or Python data classes. And here are two example data models, foo and bar, each with their own set of typed properties. With the functions primitive, I can define transformations between data models. So this function takes a foo type input, returns a bar type output, and defines the mapping between them. Since these are just TypeScript interfaces, I get DevTime type validation for free directly within my IDE. And finally, with the API primitive, I can define parameterized endpoints to surface up processed or aggregated data. Like with this bar aggregation API, I just define the query parameters that I want available in the API, and then I define the query that powers the API with the parameters slotted in. Now, I'll start my local dev server with the Moose CLI. Moose comes with some really cool open source infrastructure by default under the hood, including ClickHouse for the real-time analytical database, Redpanda for streaming, and Temporal for workflow orchestration. And we're adding support for other infrastructure all the time. So now you can see in just a couple seconds, instead of hours, I've spun up a full local copy of my production analytics stack with all of the infrastructure automatically configured and fully integrated for me. And that's just the beginning of the time savings. Moose is additionally going to take each of those primitives that I defined in native TypeScript or Python and automatically translate that code into a production-ready data stack. So for example, remember our foo and bar data models? For each data model I define, Moose automatically creates an entire ingest pipeline for me. This pipeline includes an authenticated high-performance API endpoint typed to my data model, which is backed up by a streaming buffer, which in turn lands data in a corresponding table that Moose has automatically created in my underlying analytical database. These ingress APIs are automatically documented for me using the OpenAPI standard, which means I can automatically generate SDKs in dozens of languages, and I can open this documentation in any Swagger client to start to test my data pipeline locally. So when I send in some sample data, for example, the foo data model, you can see my foo to bar function is automatically orchestrated for me, and each streaming data point is automatically transformed from one data model to the other as I defined in the function before landing in the underlying database in the tables that Moose has automatically created for me. And of course, Moose has also automatically created my bar aggregation egress API endpoint per my specification in TypeScript so that I can easily get data into my front end or whatever experience I want to power. All of my APIs have runtime validation powered by Typia and Pydantic, but when I pass in the proper parameters here, you can see I get the expected JSON return. Of course, once I've finished coding and testing locally, this is all just a regular TypeScript or Python app. So I can just push to GitHub, run a regular CI/CD workflow that automates unit tests, integration tests, etc. And again, utilizes the Moose CLI, in this case to build and Dockerize my entire application stack, exactly the same as I just had it running locally, and then deploy that stack into production on-prem or in the cloud. Or I can host my Moose application on the Boreal cloud hosting platform and one-click deploy into production. So this is really just the tip of the iceberg with Moose, but hopefully this gives you an idea of all the time you can save as a software developer working on data engineering workloads if you use the framework that comes with the right abstractions for the job at hand and gives you the developer experience that you've come to expect for every other part of your software stack. I hope you'll try Moose out and let us know in the comments what you think. Thanks.